In the mid-1990s, Stanford University was a hub of brilliant minds. The digital revolution was just beginning to hum. It was here, amidst the sun-drenched California campus, that two graduate students crossed paths. Their meeting was not one of immediate friendship. In fact, it started with disagreement. Larry Page, a thoughtful engineering student from Michigan, was touring the campus. His guide was Sergey Brin, a charismatic and outspoken mathematician who had emigrated from the Soviet Union. As they walked, they argued about nearly every topic that came up. Each saw the world through a slightly different lens. Yet, this clash of ideas was the spark that would ignite a technological firestorm. Their initial debates were a sign of something powerful. They were both deeply curious about the world. They shared a passion for data and solving complex problems. The internet was a messy, disorganized place back then. It was like a giant library with no card catalog. Finding useful information was a frustrating game of chance. Existing search engines simply counted how many times a word appeared on a page. This was a crude method, easily manipulated. Larry and Sergey knew there had to be a better way. They believed the relationships between web pages held the key to unlocking the internet's true potential. This shared vision began to transform their arguments into collaborative brainstorming sessions. They would spend long hours in their dorm rooms, surrounded by whiteboards covered in complex equations. They were not just trying to build a better search engine, they were trying to map the very structure of digital knowledge. Larry had a core idea, a moment of insight inspired by academic citations. In academia, an important paper is cited by many other papers. He wondered if the same logic could apply to the web. What if a link from one page to another was like a vote of confidence? This was the seed of their revolutionary concept. Their partnership solidified around this central challenge. Larry was the visionary, dreaming up the grand architecture of this new system. Sergey was the mathematical genius, figuring out how to turn that vision into a working algorithm. They complemented each other perfectly. Their initial friction had smoothed into a powerful creative force. They were united by a common goal to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. This simple yet incredibly ambitious mission would become the guiding principle for everything that followed. They were no longer just two students arguing on a campus tour. They were partners on the verge of changing the world. The project began humbly, with a name that sounded more like a massage service than a tech innovation back rub. The name was a clever nod to its core function. It analyzed the web's backlinks to determine a page's importance. The idea was simple but profound. A website's value wasn't just about the words on the page. It was about how many other credible websites linked to it. If a trusted site like the New York Times linked to a smaller blog, that link acted as an endorsement. It passed along authority and trust. This system, which they would later formalize as PageRank, was the secret sauce that would set them apart from everyone else. Working out of their Stanford dorm rooms, they started building the system. The rooms became a chaotic mess of computer parts, cables, and hard drives. They begged and borrowed computers from across the campus to build the server infrastructure needed to crawl the web. At the time, they were mapping a web of about 25 million pages. It was a massive undertaking for two students with limited resources. They wrote the code themselves, refining the algorithm that would rank pages based on this new logic of linked authority. It was a completely new way of looking at the internet. They saw it not as a collection of documents, but as a vast, interconnected web of relationships. The results were astonishingly better than anything else available. While other search engines returned lists of irrelevant links, Backrub consistently delivered the most useful and authoritative pages first. Word began to spread around the Stanford campus. Students and professors started using the primitive search page, hosted on the university's network. They were amazed by its accuracy. It just worked. This early success confirmed what Larry and Sergey suspected. They had discovered a fundamentally better way to navigate the digital world. Their little research project was quickly outgrowing its academic origins. It was becoming something much bigger. The name Backrub was quirky, but it didn't capture the scale of their ambition. They needed something that spoke to the immense amount of data they were organizing. They brainstormed new names, looking for something that reflected the concept of infinity. A fellow student suggested Google, the mathematical term for the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. It was perfect. It represented the vastness of the web they were trying to index. A slight misspelling resulted in the name we know today, Google. With a new name and a proven concept, they were ready to take their project beyond the walls of Stanford. Larry and Sergey knew their project had the potential to become a real company, but they needed funding. They created a business plan and started knocking on doors in Silicon Valley. Many investors didn't understand their vision. They were comfortable with the existing models. Then they met Andy Bechtolsheim, a co-founder of Sun Microsystems. In a brief 10-minute pitch on a professor's front porch, they showed him their demo. Bechtolsheim saw the potential immediately. He told them, "I don't have time to discuss this, I'm sure it'll work." He wrote them a check for $100,000 made out to Google Inc. There was just one problem: Google Inc. did not yet exist. The check sat in a desk drawer for weeks while they scrambled to officially incorporate the company. With that first seed of funding, they were finally able to move out of their dorm rooms. In September 1998, they rented a garage from a friend in Menlo Park, California. This garage, owned by Susan Wojcicki, who would later become the CEO of YouTube, is now a legendary part of Silicon Valley lore. It became their first official office. It had a washer, a dryer, and a hot tub, but it was also the command center for their growing operation. They hired their first employee, a fellow Stanford student named Craig Silverstein. The early days in the garage were filled with energy and a playful spirit. They were building a serious company, but they didn't take themselves too seriously. They started the Google Friends newsletter to keep people updated on their progress. They created the very first Google Doodle in 1998. Larry and Sergey were heading to the Burning Man festival in Nevada and wanted to let users know they would be away from the office. They placed the festival's stick figure logo behind the second O in Google's logo. This small, creative touch established a tradition of playfulness that would become a core part of Google's brand identity for years to come. As their user base grew, so did their need for more space and more power. The garage was quickly becoming too small for their ambitions. In early 1999, they secured a major round of funding, $25 million from two of the most respected venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. This investment gave them the resources they needed to scale up. They hired more engineers, moved into a proper office in Palo Alto, and began to build the infrastructure required to handle millions of search queries per day. The garage was behind them. Google was no longer a small project. It was a fast-growing company on a mission to organize the world's information. By the year 2000, Google was the undisputed king of search. Its clean, simple homepage and superior results had won over the internet. Major portals like Yahoo, once a competitor, signed a deal to make Google its default search provider. This was a massive vote of confidence that introduced Google to millions of new users overnight. But Larry and Sergey's vision extended far beyond just search. They wanted to solve other big problems. They started thinking about how they could make money without cluttering their homepage with annoying banner ads. This led to the creation of AdWords in late 2000, a brilliant system that changed online advertising forever. AdWords allowed businesses to buy small text-based ads that appeared alongside search results. The ads were relevant to what the user was searching for, making them genuinely useful. Businesses paid only when a user clicked on their ad. This model was a win for everyone. Users got relevant ads, advertisers got a measurable way to reach customers, and Google got a powerful revenue stream that didn't compromise its user-first philosophy. This financial engine would fund Google's incredible expansion for the next 2 decades. It gave them the freedom to experiment, to innovate, and to think bigger than any other company on the web. As the company grew rapidly, the founders realized they needed experienced leadership to manage the increasing complexity. They were brilliant innovators, but they knew they weren't seasoned business executives. In 2001, they made a pivotal decision. They hired Eric Schmidt, a veteran executive from Novell and Sun Microsystems, to become Google's CEO. Larry and Sergey would focus on technology and product development, while Eric would handle the business side of things. This leadership trio worked remarkably well. It provided the adult supervision the investors wanted, while ensuring that Google's unique, engineering-driven culture remained intact. With a solid business model and strong leadership in place, Google entered a period of explosive creativity. The company became famous for its 20% time policy, which encouraged engineers to spend 1 day a week working on their own passion projects. This policy gave birth to some of Google's most iconic products. One of these was Gmail, launched in 2004. It offered an unprecedented 1 gigabyte of storage, which was hundreds of times more than competitors. Another was Google Maps, which launched in 2005 and transformed how we navigate our world. Google was no longer just a search company. It was becoming an indispensable part of daily life. On August 19, 2004, Google took a monumental step. It went public with an initial public offering, an IPO. But this wasn't your typical Wall Street event. The founders insisted on an unconventional auction process designed to give individual investors a fair chance to buy shares. They also wrote a letter to their new shareholders, outlining their long-term vision. In that letter, they declared that Google was not a conventional company and that they would not be driven by short-term quarterly profits. They famously adopted the informal motto, "Don't be evil," as a promise to always put users and the world first. The IPO was a massive success, instantly making the founders and many early employees billionaires. The influx of capital from the IPO fueled an even greater wave of global expansion and acquisition. Google began opening offices all over the world, tailoring its products to different languages and cultures. The company was on a buying spree, acquiring promising startups that aligned with its mission. The most significant of these was the purchase of YouTube in 2006 for $1.65 billion. At the time, a lot of people thought the price was outrageously high for a fledgling video sharing site. But Google saw its potential to become the world's primary platform for online video. It was a bold bet that paid off spectacularly, cementing Google's dominance in another critical area of the internet. Another transformative acquisition came in 2005, when Google bought a small startup called Android Inc. The team was building a mobile operating system. Back then, the smartphone market was dominated by companies like Nokia and BlackBerry. Google decided to make Android an open-source platform, giving it away to phone manufacturers for free. This brilliant strategy accelerated its adoption and created a powerful ecosystem to compete with Apple's iPhone. Today, Android is the most popular mobile operating system in the world, running on billions of devices and ensuring that Google services are in the pockets of people everywhere. This period really defined Google's strategy: build, buy, and integrate. They built innovative products in-house like Google Chrome, a faster and more secure web browser launched in 2008. They bought strategic companies like YouTube and Android to enter new markets quickly, and they integrated everything into a seamless ecosystem of services. Your Gmail account logged you into YouTube, your searches informed Google Maps, and everything synced to your Android phone. Google was no longer just a website you visited. It was becoming the underlying operating system for your digital life, a powerful and interconnected suite of tools that touched nearly every aspect of modern existence. As Google grew into a global behemoth, its ambitions expanded far beyond the internet. The company began investing in what it called moonshot projects. These were high-risk, long-term initiatives aimed at solving some of the world's biggest problems through radical technology. They started a project to scan every book ever published, Google Books. They developed self-driving cars, which we now know as Waymo. They created smart contact lenses and augmented reality glasses like Google Glass. They even ventured into life extension and biotechnology. These projects were definitely exciting and futuristic, but they were very different from Google's core business of search and advertising. This diversification created a challenge. How could a company focused on organizing information also manage projects related to healthcare, transportation, and robotics? Investors were sometimes confused. Was Google losing its focus? To bring clarity and structure to their ever-expanding universe of projects, Larry and Sergey announced a major corporate restructuring in 2015. They created a new parent company called Alphabet Inc. Google would become the largest subsidiary under the Alphabet umbrella, containing all the core internet products like Search, Maps, YouTube, and Android. The other ambitious long-term ventures would be spun out as independent companies, also under Alphabet. The creation of Alphabet was a brilliant move. It allowed the core Google business to remain focused and efficient, led by a new CEO, Sundar Pichai. At the same time, it gave the moonshot projects the freedom and independence to operate like startups. Each Alphabet company could have its own CEO and its own mission, from Waymo's focus on autonomous driving to Verily's work in life sciences. Larry Page became the CEO of Alphabet, and Sergey Brin its president. This allowed them to step back from the day-to-day management of Google and focus on what they loved most, exploring the next big thing. Under this new structure, innovation accelerated across the board. The core Google business continued to thrive, pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence with projects like Google Assistant and DeepMind. AI became the new frontier, enhancing everything from search results to photo organization. Meanwhile, the other Alphabet companies made significant progress. Waymo's self-driving cars logged millions of autonomous miles on public roads. Wing began making commercial drone deliveries. Alphabet wasn't just a holding company. It was an engine for invention, designed to nurture groundbreaking ideas and turn them into world-changing businesses for decades to come. With immense power comes immense responsibility, and Google's journey was not without its share of major challenges. As the company grew into one of the most powerful corporations on Earth, it began to face intense scrutiny from governments, competitors, and the public. Its dominance in search, advertising, and mobile operating systems led to accusations of anti-competitive behavior. Regulators in Europe and the United States launched massive antitrust investigations, questioning whether Google was using its power to unfairly disadvantage rivals. This resulted in billions of dollars in fines and forced changes to some of its business practices. Another major battleground was privacy. Google's business model is built on collecting vast amounts of user data to personalize services and target advertising. This raised profound questions about how much one company should know about individuals. Incidents like the collection of Wi-Fi data by its Street View cars and debates over how long user data was stored fueled a growing public concern. Google found itself in a constant balancing act. It had to meet user demands for smarter, more personalized products while also addressing legitimate fears about digital surveillance and the erosion of personal privacy. The company responded by introducing more transparent privacy controls and dashboards for users. Copyright also became a contentious issue. Google's mission to organize all the world's information sometimes clashed with the rights of creators. The Google Books project, which aimed to create a digital library of all books, led to major lawsuits from authors and publishers who argued it was mass copyright infringement. Similarly, YouTube struggled for years with the problem of users uploading copyrighted music and videos without permission. These legal battles forced Google to develop sophisticated systems, like YouTube's Content ID, to help copyright holders identify and manage their content on its platforms, finding a difficult middle ground between access and ownership. Throughout these challenges, Google had to evolve from a disruptive startup into a mature global institution. The informal motto, "Don't be evil," was tested time and again. The company was no longer just a beloved tool. It was a global utility with profound influence over commerce, culture, and communication. It had to navigate complex ethical dilemmas, from its business dealings in countries with restrictive governments to the potential for its algorithms to reinforce societal biases. The journey from a simple search engine to a global superpower came with a new set of responsibilities that were just as complex as the technical problems the founders had set out to solve. In December 2019, nearly 25 years after they first met on the Stanford campus, Larry Page and Sergey Brin announced they were stepping down from their leadership roles at Alphabet. They handed the reins of the entire empire to Sundar Pichai, who became the CEO of both Google and its parent company, Alphabet. In a public letter, the founders explained that the company was running well, and it was time for them to assume the role of proud parents, offering advice and guidance rather than being involved in daily management. It marked the end of an era, but it was also a testament to the enduring culture they had built. The legacy they leave is almost impossible to overstate. They took a chaotic, untamed internet and gave it a structure. They created tools that billions of people now rely on every single day for communication, navigation, entertainment, and knowledge. Google is more than a company. It has become a verb, synonymous with the act of seeking information itself. Their initial vision, to make the world's information universally accessible and useful, has been largely realized. From rural villages to bustling megacities, Google's services have empowered people, transformed industries, and reshaped the modern world in countless ways. Today, under Sundar Pichai's leadership, Google continues to push the frontiers of technology with a heavy focus on artificial intelligence. AI is being woven into the fabric of every Google product, making them smarter, more predictive, and more helpful. Google Assistant can manage your schedule. Google Photos can find pictures of your dog from years ago, and Google Translate can break down language barriers in real time. The company is in a race with other tech giants to build the most advanced AI, believing it will be the next great technological shift, as fundamental as the arrival of the web or the smartphone. The story of Google is a story of relentless innovation. It began with two students who believed they could solve a problem that stumped everyone else. Their journey from a dorm room to a garage to global domination is a powerful lesson in the impact of a big idea combined with brilliant execution. While the company faces ongoing challenges related to its size and influence, its core mission continues to drive it forward. As it moves into its next chapter, Google, now a mature pillar of the alphabet empire, remains dedicated to organizing an ever-expanding universe of information and shaping the future of how we interact with technology and the world around us.